And then if there's an idea that for some reason didn't get captured in all the meetings that we had, raise your hand again on the card. If there's for some reason an idea that didn't come up that you still have an interest in or a passion in, please jot that down as well. So that's why these cards are important. And then at the end of the meeting, we'll collect these cards and follow up accordingly. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and introduce David Terrell. David is with Ball State. Michael Fortunato is with Creative Insight Community Development. They're the ones that helped us conduct those sessions back in April, and they have collected data and put this presentation together. I know there'll be probably time at the end for questions. If there's one just burning in your mind, I assume it's okay for them to stick up their hand, but we want to try to reserve questions till the end. But there will be time for that. If you know of a lot of other people that are coming, we do have an overflow room that we'll have available that this will be cast on. This is going to be, we're recording it on Zoom. So at some point in time, we'll get that sent out probably on our Facebook page so people can actually see it that aren't here. So I know the newspaper's here, but I know they've actually wanted to make sure and have that as a recording option for them. So again, I don't know who's going to start, but are you guys ready?
Yeah, Michael's still tinkering. I'm going to start.
Okay. Well, David, I'll let you go ahead and get started. Anything you need from us?
Did you lose the PowerPoint?
I'm not sure where it went. It was just here 1 second ago. So
Well, I'll go ahead and get started, and then there it is.
there we are.
All right.
There
Are
you
you
go.
done tinkering?
I'm done tinkering. That's it.
Michael's the creative one here, and so he just can't stop tinkering. Again, I'm David Terrell with the Indiana Communities Institute at Ball State, and today we're going to again review the process. We're glad to be back. I forgot to say that. We're glad to be back in Tipton County. I was joking with Mark that we're on the verge of opening a branch campus of ICI because we seem to be in Tipton County a lot, and we enjoy every time we're here, we enjoy working with you. But we're going to review the process, and reviewing your data, it's not data, it's reviewing all the inputs that we got from the community, the qualitative data that we're talking about. And then in the process, we'll be checking. Mark said we will have time at the end for questions, but about midway through the process, we're going to facilitate a little bit of discussion about what something should look like in terms of vision statement. And we're going to suggest things, but based on everything you're hearing in terms of feedback, we're going to ask something about midway about that. And that could be time for questions. And then at the end, we're going to ask for more feedback on the overall goals, the visionary goals for the community, for the county. We do want to thank you. We know how hard it is to go through a day and come to another meeting. And it takes a lot of effort on your part. I don't want to ever think that it's not appreciated. So thank you for being there. Also, thank you for the foundation for underwriting all of this and really being a real community leader and pulling people together to have these conversations. A little bit of introductions about us. ICI is at Ball State. We work with communities all over the state to really work on that transition from business, traditional economic development to more holistic community development, because that's really the economic drivers long-term for communities. And CICD is a strong partner with us who has, we've been working and partnering for almost 3 years now, and doing things around the state with the community foundations and with other endeavors. And this is one of these endeavors that we've been working on. Just to give you an idea of the idea of that's not just Michael and me, we are here, but every one of these people have been in Tipton County providing support throughout, or if they've not been in Tipton County, they've been providing back office support for us. So it is quite the endeavor. A couple of people we have not put on here are the folks from the research side, Center for Business and Economic Research. They actually provided the data we provided at the visioning sessions. So it's not just 2 people, it's a lot of people that have gone into this endeavor. Now I'm going to hand it over to Michael to give you a broad overview of the processes we went through and maybe a little bit of the whys.
Sure,
So
that's great.
please, go ahead.
Thanks, David. All right. Good evening, everybody. Great to see y'all. I'm sorry I was tinkering a little bit earlier. You know, there's I'm going to do it a little bit more by putting our camera view up here with our overflow room. So there are folks, if they come in, they can go and listen to this presentation right in the room across the hall. So apologies for the tinkering. It's a musician thing. I promise if records would never get made if it weren't for producers who are finally the ones that say, okay, it sounds great. You don't need to go back and do this part a third time. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about our general processes, what we did when we were trying to conduct a visioning session. There's a number of ways that people go about doing this. And our for both ICI and CICD, we're very committed to the idea of listening to what the science tells us about how do we really get a better quality vision from a large group of very diverse people that have a bunch of different motivations, a bunch of different reasons for being here. How do we actually do that? And our overall process, we had 2 main goals that we wanted to get out of this process. First of all, we wanted to develop a strategic vision that was based on local collective aspiration. It's just a fancy way of saying, what does everybody want to see happen here? That's it. You know, what do we care about? What would we like Tipton County to look like in the future? You know, looking maybe about, let's say, 10 years down the road and beyond. And this is something that requires what we call thematic analysis. Another fancy term that means we're just grouping ideas together that reoccur over and over again. So if people are mentioning it a lot, it's probably really important. And we want to be sure that we're capturing that and that we're getting that to be prominently featured in the vision that's being created here. The second thing is to create a set of general goals for the county. And this requires some prioritization and feasibility analysis. We wanted to actually take what was there, and we did something called a turbo SWOT, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the idea is that, you know, we can all be pie in the sky, we can all be, you know, blue sky thinkers. But at the end of the day, there's also real constraints, and we have to be aware of those. We don't just want to put together a vision that is totally unrealistic. We want to put together a vision that is aware of what's really going on here in the county, so that we can actually start to get some wins on the board. We're not just putting ideas out there and not being aware of what we're really facing. The key here, though, on both of these goals is that this vision is not about us. Even though we're engaging here as a consulting team to be able to put together the vision, we want as little of our own voice in this plan whatsoever. It's not about us. It's not about our ideas. It's about the community's ideas. And that's why we took so much time and effort to hold meetings at various different places around the county. And this was really important because this is a countywide vision. It's not just about Tipton. It's not just about the city here. It's about the whole county and where the county is situated and what you're facing. So we wanted to be sure that this sounds like, feels like, acts like your plan, the one that you created. And we're hoping that you can continue to give us feedback tonight about that. Are we doing a good job? Are we really capturing this? So to do this, we had 4 town hall listening sessions. We went all over the county. We went to Kempton, we went to Sharpsville, we went to Windfall, we went to Tipton. And we had really, really good sessions in every single one of these locations. We were sort of, between us, honestly, you're really surprised at the high turnout that we saw. We were so excited to see the people were taking the time to invest in this process. And then what we did is we went through something, I'm going to show you a nice diagram in a minute. We went through some expansion and constraint exercises. And this is again, how do we take a large number of people and get really, really good, clear ideas? We start by really opening up the process and saying, let's be very creative. And then we start to bring it in terms of what's realistic. And every single meeting that we conducted was designed in this fashion. It was designed to really open things up and then bring things back down to earth again. And that's what we were able to do over the course of those 4 meetings. So the expansion was what we called the postcard from the future exercise. How many of you participated in that? If you recall, this was about thinking. It's like many of us send postcards from vacation. Well, we're sending a postcard from home to somebody outside the community, but we're doing it 10 years in the future. We're talking about what the community really looks like in our mind, in our imagination. And that's opening up that creative side. That's really expanding. It's an open brainstorm, and it really taps into what you really care about. What do you want your future community to look like? So we're focusing on positivity and opportunity. We're being very, very positive. There's no wrong answers at this stage. Then we introduced the constraint. We brought in what's called the turbo SWOT. SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. This is the recognition that there are definitely weaknesses and threats in this community. Weaknesses are internal, threats are external. We got to be aware of those. Nobody has an infinite budget and infinite time and infinite talent. We've got what we've got. And a really good plan is going to start there. It's not going to start with some future state, like if only we could get this funding or that funding or this kind of, situation. We can get there, but it starts with who's here. And it starts with who has access to these kinds of ideas and making them actually happen. So it's a really current needs-focused approach. This is my fancy diagram of how this all looks. You can see we start with the postcards, we expand, we get this sphere of good ideas, all of these great ideas that are, some of them are really down to earth and some of them are really wild. That's great. We're building our situational awareness. David gave a great presentation on local data, what the situation is facing the county. And we tried to align those ideas behind the data. What's really going on here? And then we went into the turbo SWOT exercise and we said, okay, given what we're really facing, what are the most realistic versions of these ideas? This is what we call compression. And we get to the sphere of realistic good ideas. These are the things that, these are great ideas that we can also do. That's simple. Things we are able to accomplish, they're feasible. So that's how we got there across 180 participants. So we had a lot of data to compile and to bring together and to think through and to really analyze. It took a long time, but I'm really pleased with the results. I think David's really pleased with the results. We jointly conducted this analysis. The ICI team did an outstanding job, especially on doing the qualitative and thematic research. We developed the key themes. We put together a draft vision statement. We put together some draft goals. We're going to present them all tonight. And then what we're doing now, this is the most important part. We wanted to take all of this work. We're not just going to put it in a report and throw it out there. We want to run it by the community again first to make sure that we're not off track. We're not missing something big. And that's really what we're here to do tonight. We're talking through, hey, here's what we got out of those meetings. How do we do? Hopefully a B+ or better, I would hope. So, so this is an opportunity to really talk through those ideas.
I think you go on next.
Yeah, I think I'll keep talking about some of the key findings here first.
The early on the, go to the next slide.
Sure.
Yes, that you can do that.
Yeah, so we're going to start by talking about some of the early findings. And remember, there were 2 phases here. We had the expansion and the contraction. We had the postcards, and then we had the turbo SWOT. So let's start talking about, again, the overall process and how we brought people together. David, you want to
Yeah,
cover
I'll-
this?
I'll cover this.
Yeah, thanks.
So again, we were pleasantly surprised by the numbers of people who showed up at all the communities. And kind of looks like a crescendo. If you look at it, I kind of think maybe word of mouth happened along the way, but between us, we've done decades of work in communities and listening sessions. Believe me, these are big numbers, getting the people out there. And the process was, as Michael said, we did share a data exercise and gave you a picture of what Tipton County looks like right now. And we looked at the economy, we looked at population, we looked at demographics, we looked at education. We just kind of did the whole comprehensive picture, but a really quick view. And then we went through the postcards from the future, as Michael talked about. And then part of the work that we would do, it would inform the CBAP launchpad, which the foundation is doing. But this is a separate exercise. This is long-term, a long-term product for the county. And so that's the process. And then I'm not going to read, we picked 3 postcards out of the many postcards to give an example. And so this is one postcard, very positive. And you can kind of, this is representative of what most of the postcards said. Does that surprise you? Maybe, maybe not. How about this one? So you always have contrarians. And this is not a bad thing. This is not a bad thing, because these, in every community we've done this, you always we'll get a postcard or 2 like this. There aren't very many, but it can be a cautionary tale. What this is saying is, if we don't do anything, this could be a scenario. And so that's part of our citizens, that there may be some skepticism, and that's something we need to acknowledge. So this is a healthy component. Now, all of them read like this, we'd have to maybe work on different interventions. I don't know what we would do. So and then again, most of them are like the first one and the third one. You see some themes occurring? Yeah, so we have some great software. First of all, somewhere our staff, we read all the postcards, and we had staff that typed all the postcards, which allowed us to work on a program to do more analysis. And I'll let Michael talk about that a little bit.
Sure. So it used to be, when you did this kind of work, that you would take keywords and you would write them on a bunch of note cards. And some poor researcher would sit around with piles and piles and piles of notes and note cards and notes, and they'd be, organizing them into key themes. The great thing is that even when we're talking about qualitative work, we're talking about work involving words, we now have programs that do a really, really great job of that and simplify a lot of the workload, and probably actually do a better job than the researcher doing it by hand, because they're more accurate, they're more precise. So it's very interesting. So we used a program called NVivo, and NVivo is a very simple qualitative analysis software. It gives you a lot of, it's very good at finding the good stuff and getting rid of the stuff that doesn't really matter, the extraneous stuff. In other words, isolating key themes. And you'll notice here, we put all of the transcripts of all of the postcards in. That's right. The transcripts of every single postcard.
Into that program. First we had to type them up.
Yep.
Then we put them into that program.
Absolutely. So, they were totally anonymous when we did it. They went in, they were just text, and we wanted to see what was in that text. And what we found is that these were the key themes that came up. And you could see how some of them clustered together. People mentioned housing and homes a lot. They talked about new was oftentimes had to do with either housing and homes or new developments in the downtown, for example, new restaurants, new retail. They talked about great typically had to do with the existing resources. We have great schools, we've got a great community, we've got great people. So people obviously feel very optimistic about what it's like to live here and what it's going to be like to live here in the future. It's going to be a great place. Family was a very, very high ranking value. This is a family oriented place. Now, this is not something that came up directly in a lot of our meetings, but what's interesting here is that being a family friendly community is clearly something that people care about. It's part of the local identity. And it might be a way that Tipton can can really, I don't want to call that a brand per se, but it's almost like that is a way that Tipton can stand apart and be unique in being a family friendly place that has lots of really great amenities and a charming rural feel. Schools came up a lot. People were very optimistic about their schools for the most part. A few people were critical. Shopping and restaurants were typically things that we see more of in the future, right? And people are talking about the future. We have such great shopping, restaurants. A few mentioned what's going on, that there are already great amenities here currently. Trails were another thing that we see popping up a lot in the future. And of course, people talking about the people, we're really happy to see that. We're really happy to see that folks are talking about the people in their community, the human-centric stuff, not just the stuff that's in the community. It's very, very important to making these things work. And of course, a downtown focus doesn't just mean Tipton, by the way. Downtown focus popped up in the other communities as well. It popped up in Windfall, popped up in Sharpsburg. I don't know about Kempton or Sharpsville, excuse me. Sharpsburg is where my father lives, actually. It's true. So sorry about that. In Sharpsville, and I don't know if it came up in Kempton. But it was.
I think it did.
I think it actually did. Yeah. So folks are talking about downtowns, even in their little downtowns. That's great. And there's something to be talked about there. That's a real goal.
So a reminder, the postcard, these
Yeah.
are the postcards, not the other exercise. This is just the postcards. And you can see on the list, there are some things that aren't in Tipton County right now that are this is the top 10. You can see that some things that are not in Tipton County yet, for example, trails. And so there's a collective aspiration for a lot of these things happening. So that's something to keep in mind as well.
Absolutely. All right. So we took a real stab at putting these ideas together. This is our attempt at being at really trying to be creative with the basic ideas that we were given again and again, and tying these key themes into a draft vision statement. We recognize that this is not perfect. This is just our first attempt, but I'll read it just so you can hear it as well as read along with it. Tipton County is a family-friendly environment filled with caring people and rural charm, situated right in the middle of everything. Every year in Tipton County, you will find more and more of the following: new housing opportunities in a peaceful setting, but still close to major commercial centers. Great schools with even better teachers. Emerging downtown destinations with new shopping and restaurant options. That's not just you, Tipton, that's the whole county. Recreational opportunities for the whole family, including trails. Family-oriented events and amenities where the focus is on the people that make Tipton County great. This
is a draft.
This is a draft. I'd like to ask you all what you think of this. I'm going to go back to it in a minute. Are there any ideas or insights that could be added to this that we're missing? And were any important ideas, or was there anything missing? Is there things that could be additional to this? Are we Are we getting it right? Is this close to what you see as a good vision for the county that's broad enough to include just about everybody here? Yes.
I have lousy internet. Sure. And I've been on the phone with Terrell. They have wanted our fiber optic building on 12.
Mhm.
Now they're not even even. Now this affects the county. People working from home, our children, studying school. Value our house. I mean, this affects. And they've been running into trouble with coyotes. And it slows them down right up this. And I don't know if there's some way that we could help.
Wireless. Everybody has problems
So,
in the ground.
so into the vision statement, we're probably talking about more about connectivity. Needs to be still needs to be an aspiration that we work in the vision for Tipton County. And we're not going to get the solutions tonight, but we need to be cognizant of the fact that there's a connectivity infrastructure that's critical in there, and people think it should be somewhere captured in this vision statement. Is that safe to say? Do I see nodding
Yeah.
heads? I see. Okay,
Great.
all right. What else?
One point I wanted to make here, I think that's an excellent point. When we get, you might also find that some of these things are addressed when we get to the goals. The
Right.
goals are, this is just the broad vision statement. This is the big thinking vision, the big stuff, looking forward, what do we want our community to look like, more or less? So we could certainly talk about how to add
We
connectivity
can
in.
entertain it, but we also have goals
Absolutely.
that will be right conjoined. And actually, we talk about broadband.
You bet.
goals. Yes.
So that's coming soon. And that's some of the more tangible, specific stuff that we can work on.
Right. Ma'am, you
Mhm.
did you have a question or point? Okay, I thought you did. Thought I saw you raise your hand. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think that's a great issue, by the way. Thank you for bringing it up. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. That's great.
Any other feedback? Mark?
Well, and, I know this is hitting people without having to do it yet, so it may take some time to digest, so that's another reason why we handed out these cards. If you have any comment or questions about this or anything else, the presentation, feel free to fill out that card. We will have this online, but with a link, go back and review what we're talking about here, refresh your memory. So in order to have more complete thoughts, may not be ready to comment on it now, but feel free to do so at any time. So I wanted to throw that out. And to your earlier point, broadband is definitely an issue in the county. We'll see that when we get further into the discussion. So elements of things that we know that we need and we want, they're stay tuned. Like Michael said, this is a broad, overarching mission, vision statement for the county. So keep that in mind as you want to set it.
And this is driven by the postcards. This is driven by the postcards. Okay. Yes, sir.
I'd only mention probably one word that might be missing there that would be important is the word safe
Safe.
from
Mhm.
fire departments, police departments, our wonderful hospital that we have in this small community.
Yeah.
Working on something to make sure that it's safe.
Sure.
To some other communities around us with our size, not safeness to the community.
Great. Excellent.
And if I can piggyback off safe, is there any chance that you think some words like safe didn't come up because they were assumed? People assumed the community was safe and they didn't bring it up? That's
In the visioning exercise, that may have been an assumption. In the turbo SWAT, it came up quite a bit.
Right.
Yeah. So there were two different exercises. So I think the visioning, I think people think of safe and more practical terms. And that may be why it showed up in the turbo SWAT,
Yeah.
not so much in the vision. So that's a good point. But you have a good point there also. You had your hand up again, ma'am?
I do, I want to spend on trail.
Right.
Our town is definitely, and, we can do bike shops,
Right.
we can do restaurants, we can start equipment.
Right.
This is the. where town is.
Right.
Like, start growing.
Right, and actually, that was a discussion, and quite a bit of discussion in all the Sharpsville and Tipton I'm aware of. That trails was a big issue, those opportunities were there. And it showed up in the aspirational component, but it also showed up in the turbo SWAT as well. So I think trails are represented. Yeah, so I appreciate that.
This could almost be brought back to connectivity too. I
Yeah.
mean, if we say connectivity
I'm
doesn't
gonna
just
put
have to be.
trails there too.
Yeah, sure. Because what are we doing? Really, we're connecting people to Sharpsville. So,
I will bring up safety. I get out.
Mhm.
I'm very- Seriously, I would like a safe place to ride.
Right,
without having to worry.
okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
great, terrific.
Any other, yes, ma'am?
Just a question, the word community is not the vision statement. Is that on purpose?
It's only on purpose to the extent that, it wasn't a word that popped up a lot in the postcards. And that's it. So, we're just rolling with what we got. So if you think that community, I mean, this is exactly why we're having this session. We want to know, like words like safe, words like community, words like, sometimes the reason that we do these different exercises is because we're thinking with different parts of our brain, different stuff comes out at different points. So we can certainly talk about how to put the term community in here.
Like instead
dear.
of environment? Yeah, okay,
I would have to add though, if you're gonna use something with community, you have to use it in a plural tense to make sure that there's multiple communities, which are all
Right.
standalone towns.
well, if Tipton County at large is a community. So that Tipton County would involve all the communities in the community of Tipton County. How's that for wordsmithing? A couple of questions over here, yes.
I think we also want to keep in mind too, that we don't want to get too ahead of ourselves to where we don't want to be big hustle bustle. We're almost wanting to protect what we've got as far as being a community and, stepping out of, the hustle and bustle of everything and keeping it quaint and quiet and
Okay,
not overrun with too much of everything.
Mhm.
okay,
And that I think lends to the safety of it.
okay.
So maybe peace along with safety or quiet or something like that. We could work on that. Sure. Yeah. Is there anything we got dead wrong here? Okay, that's good news. If we're way off track, rural, you call this place rural? I mean, if we're way off track on something, then, we definitely want to know. The whole point is that this is an organic thing and we can keep working on it. Yep.
Well, and you talked about rural,
Mhm.
and this is a beautiful, Tipton County is a rural charm.
Sure.
I think that's something that, when you drive around the countryside and you see the beautiful farms, fields and things like that, I think that's a big sign too.
Mhm.
And so we want to maintain that rural charm we have.
Great,
Okay.
great. I think it goes along with that.
Maintain rural charm.
Peace, quiet, rural
Yeah.
charm, safety, security. It's great. Community. Excellent suggestions. This is great. Thank you. If you think of anything else, absolutely positively look at that comment card and, be sure to reach out and we will do our very best to try to work these ideas in, because a lot of them are very, very consistent with one
Right.
another.
Keep in mind what Mark said. What we have is a draft. And the final one will be the scribes essentially for the final version.
Yeah.
And, some people are more comfortable speaking out now, some people are comfortable writing suggestions, and we like to have opportunities for both. So any feedback we'll have, we'll take and work with the staff to incorporate a final statement. Okay.
Okay. All right. Well, anyhow, this is moving on from here. This was the culmination of a creative process. This is big brainstorming, thinking about the future, thinking about your ideal community. But the truth is, when we start to think practically, pragmatically, you start to dig into different parts of your brain. And we recognize this, and it's almost like a different lens through which we see our communities, to the point where you can almost ask the same question two different ways and get a totally different set of answers about the places where we live and work. And actually, that's exactly what we did. We asked the same question really two different ways. We went, and wouldn't you know, the answers were very different. So it worked as we had anticipated it would. We're just going to do it this way. Okay, that's fine too. It did. I don't know why. That's okay. We'll just, hey, it's okay. All right. So this is the turbo SWAT right here. First of all, we've come to love this name because it just feels like a game show. And that's good. We want to have, this is a community. We want to, oh, brother, just, if you even tap this thing, it just goes out. We want that to happen. We want people to have fun in their communities, to feel good in their communities, and to absolutely, really sort of think creatively about what they want their community to look like. Many of you know that a SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And the way that we work with it is this. Strengths and weaknesses are internal to the community. Opportunities and threats are external. We control strengths and weaknesses. We're strong for a reason. We're strong because of the people that are here, the culture, the values, the history. We don't control opportunities and threats. These are things that sort of come along that are not part of the community, but we can react to them, and we need to be mindful in how we do that. Typically, we're trying to maximize our exposure to strengths and opportunities and minimize our exposure to weaknesses and threats. Now, why do we do this turbo style? There's two reasons. One, if we didn't, everybody would be bored to tears. And that's not good, because good thinking doesn't happen when you're cranky. It's true. We want folks to feel good and like they're having a good time. Good ideas are flowing, and it's really a mutually reinforcing thing. The other thing is that when you rely on your gut reactions, if I stepped out and I said, "What's the first word that comes to your mind?" Boom, and you just said it, you might be surprised at your own answer. And really, that's coming from a place of it's getting you out of your thinking brain into your more visceral gut reaction brain. And that's exactly what we want to do. A lot of us are used to thinking about these issues in a particular way. And those issues and the way we think about them, that gets a little bit well trodden. We want to get away from that into the stuff that really matters deep down. That's why we wanted to do this fast. We wanted to get really different kinds of answers that are at the level of what matters most to you in your community. So they're practical, but they're very much driven by what really drives you as a community member. What makes you excited? What are you most optimistic about? What are you most pessimistic about? And those gut reactions.
So what we did, for those of you who were there, you know, the turbo SWAT was very, very time sensitive. We put time limits on it, if you all remember how we went through that. Very time sensitive. I will say, we've changed our processes. We used to do SWAT processes that would take forever. And we managed all kinds of cranky. And we have found, I think this is the first time we've done it this way. At least I've done it. So we've been, again, really pleased. So you can see the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. These were the top ones. You remember, if you did we did the dot exercise with that, and we tried to and got to remember, we didn't do combining, and I'll get into that a little bit later, but we took the most frequent dots on the phrase, on the one phrase, and there might have been a little bit of similarities, like, I'll talk about that, no, like US 31. If it was US 31 access, or yeah, if it was US 31 access, or if it was just US 31 in the responses, we would count all the dots for that from that particular community. But what's interesting is the very somewhat similarity between communities, but again, depending on the communities, some differences. And I think you can see them there. What are some obvious differences that you see? I'm sorry?
Windfall doesn't care about 31.
I wouldn't say Windfall doesn't care about 31. Those might be fighting words. I don't know. It just didn't trickle to the top. I think another one is, but you see the universality of US 31. And what another thing that's interesting, it didn't pop up, but US 31 showed up as a threat, but there was a lot of discussion of US 31 as an opportunity, but it didn't trickle to the top the way US 31 as a threat was mentioned. You mentioned broadband. Broadband was trickled up, where did internet? In Kempton, it was an opportunity, but it wasn't identified as a weakness, but it was identified as an opportunity. But you're from Sharpsville, and it wasn't talked about that much in Sharpsville. And we're not saying it wasn't a problem, but this is what was, again, this is the conversation of people who were there. And that's the other thing we need to keep in mind. So any surprises here among each other? Okay.
One thing back to her comment on 31 doesn't matter to Windfall. I think, like you said, it certainly does. But keep in mind, Windfall for the 31, they access the world of it. So what this tells me is these are the things that bubble to the top.
Is this the same slide?
The strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats.
Yes.
And you'll see later in the presentation.
Yeah, that's the same slide.
It quantified by different words, but I think this is very telling. And a lot of times it's telling by what's not on here too. So take time to digest.
We've got a couple hands up over here.
Yes.
I think you were first in the back, sir, and then up front, and then over here.
There were, we missed that, and we messed up.
We goofed, sorry.
We goofed. There is a weakness
There is, and I'm trying to think
for
of
Tipton.
what-
Tipton has no weaknesses.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody said the mayor, so.
We will note that there was wide variety on the weaknesses. You know, it wasn't as clear. We'll figure it out. Sorry, I'm not sure what.
We
happened
went
there.
back and forth between PowerPoint presentations, I'll be honest, and we picked the slide that forgot that and didn't get the slide that got
Yeah.
that. So, but there is a weakness in Tipton, and I am drawing a blank on what it is. Thank you for pointing that out.
We got some other questions.
Yes.
You bet. Question up here?
That was my question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
That was my question. Same thing too.
All
Yes.
right.
Tipton has no weaknesses. Come on. No, we'll figure that out and get right back to you all.
So, so we showed you the breakdown by location. So then we aggregated, we pulled everything together regardless of the location. And we came up again, the top overall discrete responses. And you can see how it breaks down a little bit more across the board. So this is unweighted. And it's overall, anyone who attended, wherever they put the dots, that's how they showed up. So the US 31 trickled way up there. And you can see housing, and here's where broadband came into play. It's way up there as well. And geographic location in a positive note, so that was more in the strengths and opportunities. Any surprises there? Any questions or clarifications? So you see this, and then we there's an exercise that we often do with dot exercises that we didn't do in each of the sessions. And so some of you who have maybe gone through this exercise where we start combining, where there's a lot of similarities between the themes. And so with US 31 access, we may have combined more transportation related issues like roadways and things like that. And we combined, we looked at all of the responses again, and we did that combining with related issues, if that makes sense. So US 31 access was unique, but there are all kinds, if you take housing, for example, there are all kinds of different ways of looking at housing. We combine those thematically, if that makes sense. Any questions about that? And when we did,
On the top one, the US 31, it would probably be within that group of that. Am I looking at that correctly? The high band, quality of life, development, et cetera, or would that be? Okay,
well, US 31 was so unique. US 31 is so unique, there was really not a lot of combining for, I'm sorry?
You called it out. So.
Yes, I shouldn't have, but US 31 is so unique, there was really not a lot of combining with that. But however, quality of life had a lot of different same as kinds of statements. So we combined those same as statements, and that would caused a difference in the reordering. Yes, sir.
It seems to me that the common thread of all of these is they were is the focus on this, particularly with all the work that they're doing, a lot of people come anxious about that. Like I said, it seems to me that really is the enabler of all the other prosperity.
And that's why it's, even with all the combining, it's still high up there. It's still in the top 3. Yes, and in a lot of ways it is an enabler, but I think what this to me shows is, yes, we need to take care of US 31, but in addition to US 31, we have these other issues that are opportunities or in some cases threats we still need to deal with, because if we solve for US 31, it will help us, or it could hinder us in how we manage these other variables. So you're right, I would agree with US 31 is a big issue that needs to be there.
If it made the top 6 here, it's very important. You know, I mean, just because something's ranked 2nd or 3rd or 5th or whatnot, that doesn't, these were very, very, very important issues to me. I would say every single one of them popped up a lot. They were highly recurring. When you have you know, when you have over 40 people saying this is something we're paying attention to. And remember, for those of you that did the dot exercise, remember, dots are kind of like $2 bills. They're sort of scarce, right? You know, so you didn't have very many. So to dedicate your dots to an issue was kind of like saying, okay, this is really important to me above most of the other things that we're talking about. So for things to end up in that top 6 there, these are very, very top important issues that were highly recurrent.
So kind of pointing out that if you look at before doing the combining thematically, you see low pay for public officials, especially teachers, is down toward the bottom of the top 10 and lack of childcare. But when you look at combining quality of education and early childhood development, all of that, it ends up in the top 6 because those are interrelated issues. So this is how, in the process, this is how we do that, that kind of activity, kind of trickling, kind of funneling more onto the, okay, here are the salient issues. Any other questions or comments on that? Yes, ma'am.
That we do value, and that we don't value, or is that tying in to the sense of light, so we're not reflecting value? Places are not being taken care of. What's tied into that sense of community pride?
I think in this one, this was the one that overall was seen as a weakness or a threat. That the people were concerned about the sense of pride in community. And in one community, it was a dominant theme. And so there's this values discussion that was there. It's kind of interesting. People were really proud of their communities, but when the SWAT came into play, that's what emerged in the threats and the weaknesses, is this sense of this threat of lack of sense of pride in our communities. And that, yeah, so it's more of the weakness and the threat spectrum of that.
So along with that, David, you've got the light up there, but it wasn't to the extent of light, it was the extent of pride, call it whatever, ownership, pride of community.
Right.
Pride of whatever that is. That
Right.
doesn't meet the threshold of light, but it's a notch down, and that was a concern.
Yeah, that was a lot of discussion there. So what I would say, housing related issues, demand supply, especially the blight and the rehab, and that's end of the spectrum. That's a physical manifestation of this.
We have a comment back here.
That also, if I recall, was relative to folks that had walked away from some properties, some deterioration due to, there'd been fires that had happened, that some properties were left in disarray for, more than a year, or a couple of years, or 3 years, a period of time.
Right.
And so the sense of community pride, that, and it was in highly visible areas.
Right. So that, again, that's the emotional manifestation of that, the physical. So those are interrelated. But they're very distinct, and there are different ways to approach them. And we're actually working with one community, really kind of dealing with this component to start to address that component. They're on the eastern part of the state. Yes. Okay. Any other observations?
Yes, I have. When we group 5 years of new people. And we have to stop and think, how many people live in this county? Anybody have an idea? Who or how do we raise money? Update some of the things we're talking about. We're about the smallest state, are we not?
Actually, there are smaller counties. Yeah.
How about the raising funds?
Well, I think that's the broad community discussion that can't happen here. But raising the funds, that's the discussion
I'm
that,
not advising you. I think, you do not have dollars and cents to do some of the things that you'd like to do.
right. Well, raising the dollars, setting the vision and setting the goals, that is, and doing the planning, that is the compass and the catalyst for the different institutions, the elected officials, the elected bodies, the community foundation, that helps them understand how they need to raise the funds. And it's the conversation with the community to support raising the funds. So it's not, we need to do these things first before we get into the discussion of raising funds.
Then the question being is, how many county folks that are elected are here to see?
I know several, and I know at the community meetings, all three county commissioners attended all the meetings. So, and again, I give the elected officials kudos for, I haven't seen that kind of engagement in these kinds of meetings in a lot of other counties. So the county officials here and a lot of town and city officials have been attending these meetings. So there's strong interest from these officials in what's going on in these meetings. Strong interest. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for the comment.
Any other comments?
Something I will say, and for the county foundation folks, so please feel free to correct me, but in a lot of the fundraising work that we've seen, that is one of the questions that comes up is, have you done this? And have
This
you
kind of
actually-
stuff.
Have you actually reached out to the community and found out what they want to see? And that's step one to being able to even access a lot of funds to be able to get things off.
Right.
So we see this as being a really, hopefully a high value activity for that.
So we've taken the information from the Turbo SWAT, also being informed by the postcard exercise. And, we came up with the overall vision. So we came up with, I think, 5 goals.
Yep.
And so we're going to read through each of the goals and give you time to think about them. I think what we'll do is we'll read through the goals and then have the feedback session.
Yes.
Will that work? Okay. And so the first goal we looked at, we're going to read it on this screen and then do a pretty picture. So the first goal is to promote a strategy for quality of life development, including broadband connectivity, amenities, and recreation.
Yeah, so this is a highly recurring theme. I mean, the idea is, of course, is that people in the county want to live in a great place. That's not a surprise, but increasingly, there's also a recognition of what makes a great place, even a great rural place in the modern day. And a lot of that also has to do with really investing in not just physical connectivity, because people travel around more. They also travel around more for recreation as well, but also virtual connectivity, being sure that people have access to everything from online shopping to online work to telemedicine to all kinds of other things, that e-commerce, things that open up when you have really good broadband connectivity. So all of these themes came up, but they had to do with, and you said it already, connectivity is a key word here, even thinking practically about what's going on.
So goal number 2, promote successful strategies that improve healthy housing options, including affordable housing, blight removal and remediation, and infill lots.
Part of the idea here, and again, we're paraphrasing from the ideas that we heard across the 4 sessions, is that part of the focus on redevelopment or infill development has to do with making sure that this place remains rural and not letting things sprawl out too much to where it starts to just feel like a city, but really focusing in on the areas where development makes sense. And that was a theme that came in quite a bit. The housing issue is not surprising at all. According to the Urban Land Institute, 100% of US counties are in an affordable housing crisis. It means their crisis level of affordable housing. Every single county, all 3,142 of them. Tipton is no different. Rural counties are no different, just because cost of living might be a little bit lower than it is in Indy. So this is a really, really important initiative. It enables people to live and work here. And that's something that we heard an awful lot.
And yes, again, all of these goals reflect the collective input of all of the listening sessions.
David, you might, before you move on to that, you might define what infill lot is.
An infill lot is lots that are within the municipality. An infill lot, basically you tear down a house, you have an empty lot. And a lot of communities are now really aggressively pursuing the development of infill lots. And they will work with developers to maybe pull 10 infill lots across maybe 6 or 7 blocks, 6 or 7 block area, 10 to 20 infill lots, empty lots, call that a development and work for the financing of that and that type of activity. The advantage of infill lots is you already have the infrastructure. It lowers the cost of construction. It lowers the cost of development to the municipality. It's the communities are aggressively pursuing that. Another reason they're pursuing that is people are demanding more and more walkable communities. So being in a walkable community is an advantage. And if you build a house that fits the character that's already there, that's quite an advantage and is a lot more attractive to people who are attracted to that. And as Michael said, for communities that also want the balance with preserving the land and agriculture, aggressively pursuing infill helps mitigate the growth of sprawling development. So those are reasons, I mean, that's infill, and those are reasons that people are pursuing infill.
It's important. We heard so many times the quality of the soil here, the quality of the farmland here. So just being mindful of the importance of agriculture in this county too is really eye-opening for us.
So just to clarify, we identified these goal 1, 2, and 3. It's not like goal 1 isn't the top goal. We've just numbered them. they're not priorities. Because here's goal number 3. It goes back to the gentleman's observation about US 31. But there are corollary issues which were brought up, and that's the collective reason for this goal. Develop a comprehensive transportation strategy that includes access and connectivity, including but not limited to US 31, county roads, downtown walkability, and trails.
This is an interesting issue because what's tricky here is that US 31 in particular is not within the control of the community directly. We're automatically dealing with outside forces. But that doesn't mean that the community can't get organized. It can't express a really good plan for dealing with these issues. In fact, that can only work in your advantage when transportation authorities see that the community really knows what they want to do. They understand the impacts. They've done the research and they know what's going on. And that's extremely important here. So this is why we've really talked about a comprehensive transportation strategy. That's a mix of the things you control and the things that you don't. But showing how they all fit together and showing how they would impact in very meaningful ways. The community, both economically and socially. Yeah.
So along with the US 31 was prominent in the discussions. But along with US 31 was discussion of the county roads. Yeah, both in support of, or in reaction to or support of the traffic of US 31, the need for the feeder roads and the east-west roads and the need to upgrade those. There is the recognition with the development of US 31, there's going to be more traffic in Tipton County. And so I know that everyone's thinking about, okay, what about the roads surrounding US 31? So that was prominent in a lot of the discussions. And again,
How many people recall US 31 being a two-lane track highway?
Yeah.
Opened up the countryside.
yes,
They're starting to limit some of the access going back and forth, closing down some of the roads where you have to go past it, turn around, come back, just to go to the east or west.
right, right.
Part of it is this discussion to the degree that there's ever been impact study on what the current plan for 31 would have and all the contiguous communities around it.
My understanding is that's, Mark, you can,
Yeah, it's certainly ongoing. Funds are they just asked state did to do exactly that. So that's currently in process. For anybody that doesn't know, they did have a plan for US 31 that didn't include an interchange with the road. People raised their hand and said, this doesn't seem like it's what it should be. So it got the attention of enough state officials to sort of do a timeout and detail, but the bottom line is that doing some of the studies that they've done before with US 31, expanding the footprint of the impact, going right to your question. So realizing that it has more impact than just 2 miles either side of 31, it has impact miles either way of US 31. So we're told that study will incorporate some of the impact. So that's sort of an update.
Typically talking about Delta.
Yeah.
Yeah, they put RFPs out for that, and they anticipate the timeline I saw, they're gonna start in January. Called Public Environmental Linkage Study, separate of NDOT. And then whatever comes out of that study, NDOT, then will implement that plan. So our goal is to get plenty of people like they talked about at the meetings when they start having them help me. More people we have at those meetings like they're talking about, those officials, the more likely they are to get more. What we're looking for. We have 4 or 5 people show up. There's no- Probably on Facebook. Yeah, we'll try to do Facebook. We're trying to, with the county now, we're trying to get some sort of an app for the county, like a GoGo. So if you put the app on your phone, it's updated on news that's going on, events, meetings, have all the contacts and all the county offices on there. So we're working on trying to get some of that done.
so again, what this means is you guys have more meetings. But that's critical for folks like NDOT. Yes, ma'am.
Is there something that we can maybe push out there or have something where we can sign up for push technology to have an announcement, those types of meetings pushed out to anyone's phones that's signed up for that?
If you go on NDOT's website now, you can do this stuff. There's exactly advocating notify developers on different sections of US 31 and different projects that they have. You can get put effectively on the that will tell you when that happens. Now, it, I would encourage you to like our page, foundation, we put out a lot of notifications like this. So encourage you to read the newspaper, is very good about putting notifications out there, and informing people. Facebook is, the issue now that we have with communication is not like it was 40 years ago. It was a one-stop shop, starting from newspapers, and that was it. Now we have more than one channel that we have to communicate with. Because while we all took newspaper back in the day, not as many take it. But maybe some of us get our news via Facebook, Twitter, and Facebook. So you have to almost take responsibility yourself a lot of times. We'll put it out there as much as we can. And I know the Tribune does as well. But we all have to pay in some form of fashion to get that information. We do it free of charge. But
Okay.
Anyway, there's methods out there. And like the commissioner said, they're trying to do something a little on the county side to make.
Okay, so we're going to move on to, we have 2 more goals. So goal number 4, promote marketing to position Tipton County as a centrally located lifestyle alternative for living, working, recreation, and small business development that focuses on its key cultural strengths of family, character, and community care.
My friend and colleague, Ben Winchester, some of you may have seen him talk. And he is a turn that frown upside down kind of person, especially when it comes to rural areas. In fact, one of his major focuses and research is rural positivity. How to be positive about our areas instead of this narrative of constant decline. He said, we've got to change this narrative from being in the middle of nowhere to being in the middle of everywhere. Well, it's actually true. That's not just a marketing statement. It's true, and it's true right here in Tipton County. You're in the middle of everywhere. You're in the middle of, not only do you have a great community, but you're close to an incredible amount of things that people want to be close to, while also enjoying what makes Tipton County so unique. And this is really sort of the pedestal upon which you can build a really good marketing campaign, a marketing slogan, a way of being able to communicate to others how great this place is, which is something that you already know. But being able to put that word out there only generates more momentum, more people coming into the county, population sustainability, more economic growth. It's a real opportunity. But again, focus on what you've got, as opposed to being trying to be somebody else or something else or a different community.
I have another question.
Yeah.
Does anyone realize we're trying to put in a new glass? What do you call it? We're putting plants inside the glass.
Greenhouse.
Greenhouse. And I've forgotten the number. You can see the tow sticks standing out front of the high school on the highway. Wonder why that's there?
To bring in a new greenhouse.
That's right.
Ag department, or the ag.
Yeah.
FFA.
And you recall the amount of money that's going to be involved?
It's huge.
It's huge. Do you know anything about this? But this money is being brought forward by outside people. That's going on. That's something that, things are growing, and the thing they're doing there, they're trying to teach kids here at home, get them fired up about possibly staying here. Plus the huge number of people that we have that have had families in this area for over 125, 50 years.
Right.
Encouragement to give those children a chance to stay here.
That's part of all of this right here. That's the reason for this goal.
But I haven't seen much of anything. I saw one little straight in the paper.
Yeah.
And that's a big deal. So this is
It is a big deal.
having,
What is it? $250 million?
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Mucho dinero.
mucho dinero.
Mucho dinero.
And there's an opportunity there to tell others about what's going on here, build excitement around it, once people start to say, hey, look at what's happening in Tipton County, that's when you know you're really getting the word out there about what makes this place great.
But that's a major project for people, for all of us. Sometimes we say, "Oh, man, yeah, you do it, and I'm praying in the middle of the night." Anyway, that's been a major thing here. We are one of the smallest counties population.
Yeah.
State of Indiana.
So,
Those folks have a lot of pride. Same thing.
right. So this goal would incorporate those kinds of activities. So, okay. So, and then goal number 5, the last one. Promote community development of high quality education from early childhood to lifelong learning. And I think the key word is community, not just the schools, but community development of high quality education from early childhood to lifelong learning.
There's all kinds of things that you can learn that are useful, and not only useful, but really, really enjoyable. It's always shocking to me to learn about people who in their retirement years are going out to learn about gardening. They're going out to learn a new craft or a new skill. It's remarkable to know that there are educational programs outside of school that can take young people into some really interesting and locally appropriate career pathways that you're just not going to get in the school environment. Different kinds of hobbies, different kinds of vocations, avocations, chances to learn everything from all the way down to I've done work in communities in Texas where one of the biggest skills they wanted to learn, people want to learn how to cook. Everybody thinks they're a good cook, but they wanted to learn how to really do it right, and how to also, I thought this was very interesting, how to use more of their local products better. It's like, hey, I've got all these jalapenos growing everywhere and all I make is jalapeno jam. Can I do anything else with that? You bet. And actually we can have courses around that kind of thing. So there are all sorts of opportunities both within and outside of the school, and sometimes through partnerships, to be able to help raise everybody's knowledge locally. And then what do? You have more people that know more stuff, and enriches local life.
So these were the 5 goals that we compiled. And again, these are draft goals that we compiled. So, and based on the SWOT, informed by the postcard exercises and the vision. So this is feedback time again. So is this reasonably accurate and interpreted the way that you gave the inputs in the sessions? A key component, any insights that you think should be added that you may have heard differently from the way we heard, but might be insights that we need to incorporate.
Again, as we mentioned before, use your card for ideas, questions, or follow-up that we need to make that may not come to mind.
Right. And again, these are, we're kind of putting you on the spot. We're putting you on the spot for just a really quick reaction in the way Michael described it. Off the top of your head, is there anything missing? Did we just really strike out on anything? Yes, ma'am.
One thing I've noticed, there isn't much.
I'm sorry,
There aren't a lot of places.
okay.
And whether it be Art Street, I mean, it's all summer or school or whatever. That's it. And they usually go to games or. I don't see a lot of stuff for maybe younger kids, like Chuck E. Cheese or something. There's nothing overly that we go through, the kids can go and have fun.
It's never been touched. Or it's never been taught. how to play with each other.
I was trying to read through it.
Very, very hard, and it's called television. And any other electronic device.
So, so goal number one, this kind of touches on that. So is this something that we need to tinker with a little bit to be a little more forthright about it? Is that what people think?
Speaking, you speaking with our high school teacher, lots of experience. I think young people latch on to this now. It seems like they're totally involved with their cell phones and their iPads because maybe they're gonna have a lot of else.
Good.
I think that's one of the things that has to be addressed. Certainly, it's candidates. Some people stay here, while young people can stay here. I have more of those type of opportunities. We're talking 20%. 1960s opportunities or things that people in my generation might have. They got a lot more. I think you're gonna see a lot more young people at these meetings.
Okay.
You guys gotta get your
Okay.
talk to your buddies.
So we'll take that, we'll incorporate that, those thoughts. I think it's a good idea. Yes, ma'am?
We had a comment here and then.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay.
I mean, I'm looking around here and I'm just never.
Okay. Oh, at the listening sessions?
Yeah, and these activities did come up. I think that a few of them, they just didn't rise to the top. And it, I don't know, what school affiliations are here, but I know that there are a lot of things coming up that maybe haven't been available the last few years. So I think there are a lot more opportunities for this as well. So, I would just encourage everyone to bring your ideas to the table.
Okay.
We had a comment up here.
So one of the things I remember discussing at the meeting that one fall was the threat of outside influences coming in. Like, I know we talked about drugs and we talked about other things, and just how it's kind of in the center of everything. So there is that potential for those threats to come in. And I don't recall seeing anything in the goals about protection of our way of life here in this community. What type of things do we have in by way of maybe community involvement, types of meetings, like maybe with the sheriff? What kind of things can we do to protect ourselves? The world outside of this community is crazy right now. And
Right.
so the sheriff being the last line of defense, what kind of things should we be in tune to so that outside influences don't come in and ruin?
So there are a couple of thoughts there. It was discussed and it was brought up. It didn't trickle to the top in terms of the DOT exercise. That doesn't mean it's an issue that would go away. And we got to remember, these are broad goals. And underneath the goals will be objectives that you can execute. And so we continue to take that information from the listening sessions and work to incorporate those things that, like you mentioned, into the goals as objectives to achieve. So the strategy for quality of life could include a component on safety and prevention. So that would be an objective under goal number 1. So they're not forgotten, but when you're trying to develop broad goals, you have to remember to refer back to already the discussions that already happened and use that as information to feed the objectives as you develop action plans. Does that make sense?
It does, and I don't know if that would fall into number 4 or if it's something that we maybe need to tweak.
Yeah, and that's up to the community on which goal to put it in. Yeah, but I think again, it didn't trickle to the top, but it was discussed in all the meetings.
We got it noted here. So this
Yes.
is absolutely, that's, thank you for bringing that up. I mean, this is the perfect kind of feedback that we're looking for, because this helps us to, again, to take these really broad ideas and focus them in certain ways. Based on what was said earlier. And I also like how you put it too, you know, this was something that was discussed, we actually had a discussion about it. But the thing that we always try to capture is that we're trying to stay true, not to, we all have things we'd like to see personally happen, but also to stay true to the discussions that occurred in the sessions, and making sure that we got that right. You know, we're capturing the key highlights here. So.
Good. Great input. Mark?
Just want to make note of something you mentioned earlier. I think decidedly probably an older crowd, but the 4 sessions were, I was impressed by the number of younger folks that we had there. And I think David and Michael, that was something. They're not here tonight necessarily in the numbers that they were, but they were involved. A lot of what you see here is based on their interest. So it did not, we had a pretty wide and representative demographic attend those meetings, I feel like. And again, this is a combination, but just to put people's mind at ease, maybe you weren't able to attend one of the listening sessions, but sometimes maybe others can't attend this session. So
Right.
this is not a comprehensive demographic of what, the representative demographic of what was that.
What struck us was the high number of individuals aged 20 to 35.
Yeah.
As an example, that was mind blowing that every community had strong representation of that age group. And most of them, the communities had teenagers, youth at the meetings as well. So it was a broad representation. Mark, you made a good point there.
The least likely demographic to find in rural areas,
They showed up.
but they showed up. But don't feel bad. It's been that way since the 1860s. That's true.
Okay, any last thoughts? Again, you have the opportunity right now to write something down and leave it. It'll be there for, this will be on the website for you to look at, and you'll have a window of time to give input. And then we'll work with the staff to come up with the final product. I think that's it. Mark?
All right. Thank you. Thank you, David, Michael.
Thank
For your time. Of course. As was already discussed, feel free to stay around here, write your thoughts down, write your notes down while they're still fresh in your mind. I'll be around here for a while. Give us a call, drop us an email. We want this process. It's an ongoing process. So it's not something that there's a beginning and an end to. It's really ongoing, and we're really towards the beginning of it. This is nowhere close to the end. There's a lot of great things going on, but they have to continue. So thank you for coming out on a beautiful evening, and we will stay tuned. The best way to find out about our goings on, especially with this process, is to look at our Facebook page. We post on a fairly regular basis, and we'll stay informed that way. We also communicate with the newspaper and the county officials, so we'll be in touch one way or the other. And as most of you, let me ask you this question. How many found out about this meeting from the mailer that you received in the mail? Okay, the vast majority. Okay, so that's another way that we stay in communication. Not cheap communication, by the way, but it's fairly effective. So, but between that, Facebook, newspaper, and others, we try to stay in touch.
What is the next step after this tonight? What's the next step in this process? And how many more steps will there be before there's final product? And Do we have a projection of when that might be?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So we'll take the feedback from tonight. We'll go back and make tweaks here, there, and yon. But we hope before the end of the year, is that a good projection? Before the end of the year, we'll have a quote final that we will present the county officials, city officials, ourselves, because it informs how programs happen here at the foundation and what we get involved in. The towns, Paul Sharpsville, all the town board folks were involved in those meetings and they're very interested in this. So we'll take what we end up with here, and that will help inform and help develop the ongoing programs and plans that not only the foundation has, the county has, towns have, and even the township. We've got 6 township trustees that are interested in this information. Good question. Any other questions before we dismiss? Thanks.
All right.
Be safe.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you. Shut that puppy down.
You bet. 1 second.